Okay, hey, good afternoon. My name is Brian Allen. I'm a freelance illustrator. If this is the first time you're joining me, I usually draw every afternoon at 2:30 Eastern. I'm using Clip Studio Paint today, and I'm going to be drawing or inking rather this sketch I have of a king standing over a slayed dragon head. This was actually something I did for a client, and the sketch itself was rejected, unfortunately. They went in a pretty different direction, but I really like this, so I wanted to go ahead and just finish it up for my own portfolio, and maybe someday I can and license it or reuse it in some way. Um, if any of you guys have any questions, go ahead and let me know either in the comments on Facebook or on YouTube, and I'd be happy to answer. If you don't ask any questions, then that means I got to ramble about whatever comes to my head, and that's not a good thing. So let me get started here. So what I want to do is change my pencil drawing to like a lighter blue, just by changing the layer property up here, and I'm going to knock that way back. This sketch is pretty different than the way I normally work because I would normally spend more time on the pencils and really flesh them out. So since I kind of skipping that stage, I'm not sure exactly how this will turn out. It's probably going to appear a little bit rougher, but that might be all right. So I'm going to use one of my favorite ink brushes here called the Pen Pencil from MS4 or Manga Studio 4. And let me just throw some practice strokes real quick. Yeah, that's good. Feels about right. I'm going to try to turn up the pressure sensitivity a little. That's too much. A lot of people ask me a lot what my brush settings are, and I do have a video about that on my YouTube channel. But the truth is, I fiddle with them a lot. So the pressure sensitivity and things, I change that quite often, sort of just depending on what kind of style I'm going for. So if you find that you're not sure if your pressure sensitivity is working, I wouldn't stress too much about it because it can change with your mood. So I have the Symmetry Ruler turned on, and what I'm going to do first is tackle all the parts that are perfectly symmetrical, but I'm not going to really handle any of the lighting yet because you don't want the same shadows on each side, so that starts to look fake. So I'm just going to go through and outline some of the basic shapes. Hey, I have a question here from Diedrich asking me how long have I been drawing Roos logos. Um, Most of you watching probably have never heard of those before. It's a really cool tradition in Norway, and I hope I don't get the details wrong, but basically it's like a graduation celebration, and these guys will rent or buy a bus, and then they live on that bus for like a month, I think, and basically just party and have a good time. And the different classes have sort of different rivalries. So what they'll do is that each class comes up with a theme, or each bus rather, and then they hire artists to decorate the buses. So I've been hired a couple times to create logos for these buses, and it's always a lot of fun. That's actually what this sketch started out as, but they changed the theme. So to answer your question, how long? I think I did the first one actually way back in 2015, so about 2 years, maybe almost 3 years. But I recently started doing a lot more of them, maybe a year in. Thanks for your question. So let's see. Hey Randy, what's going on, man? I love the stuff you did for Harley recently. It's excellent, excellent work. I'm really jealous of your digital painting abilities. I really need to sit down and make an effort to create some artwork without line art. I have done it. I mean, I have some in my portfolio, but it's not my strongest work. I have a question here. How long have I been drawing for? Um, so there's a lot of answers to that one. Professionally, or let me back up. So I've been a freelance illustrator full time since 2012. So March 2012. So that's getting close to 6 years. And then before that, I had a couple illustration jobs, full time jobs, since 2014. So you could say I've been illustrating professionally since, I'm sorry, not 2014, 2004. As far as how long have I actually been drawing, I mean, since I was a kid, really. Uh, I really haven't been, I would say, really good at it until maybe a few years ago. But I used to love drawing as a kid, and I have two kids now, and they love it too, which is exciting. Hey Kevin, what's up? How you doing, man? I recently posted a review of the iPad Pro. I was talking about it last time because I tried the iPad Pro and I didn't like it, so I took it back and I outlined some reasons why. But unfortunately, I took it back just before Clip Studio Paint released their iPad Pro version, so I never got to try it. And I've been hearing amazing things about it. I've heard it's basically exactly like the desktop version. So I kind of wish that I had maybe stuck with it, but I think what I'm going to end up doing is getting the Wacom Mobile Studio Pro, which is crazy expensive. But I just think that's what I need. I need something that is a tablet but also a laptop, and the iPad Pro just was not that. See, I'm gonna turn up this a bit. Now this guy's beard, I don't want this beard to be totally symmetrical, but what I'm gonna do is just to start, keep the symmetry turned on, and then I'll go back in later and mess up the other side, change it up. I've been getting a ton of feedback about that review I did of the iPad Pro because there are a lot of people who vehemently support it. Um, you know, so it's almost like they're defending it. Uh, Mac users sometimes get that way. I'm a Mac user, but I'm not a Mac defender, I guess. It Mac has lots of flaws, and I don't hesitate talking about them. But there's no doubt that people have been doing amazing, amazing things with the iPad Pro. No question. Just was not, just wasn't for me. Oh, hey, I wanted to share something real quick. Sorry for the ad, but I just recently created this artwork for myself. It's like a repeatable eyeballs and teeth and tongue pattern. Um, it was a crazy amount of work to try to make this thing repeatable, but I did it so that you could tile this pattern infinitely. And I'm selling it at my shop at Rage On, so you can get it on shoes or phone cases or hoodies or whatever. So I think I definitely want to pick up one for myself. If anybody's interested or thinks it'd make a good gift, I'd really appreciate it if you could help spread the word. So thanks. That's my public service announcement there. All right, let's get back to work. Hey, Diedrich asking where can you contact me? Um, if you follow me on Instagram, just send me a message through there, or you can email me. My contact information is, I think, on my YouTube page. You can check that out. Basically, with Roos Logos, I work exclusively with a company, so you would need to talk to them, but I can point you in the right direction. Hey, Dennis, how you doing? Thanks for joining. I wanted this guy's emblem to be kind of like a lion, kind of like a cross between a lion and a skull. Let's see if I can pull that off. My Wacom 24-inch HD, it's starting to get pretty old. This thing I think is about 7 years old, and I'm starting to experience a little bit of a problem where every once in a while I have to turn it on and off like that real quick because the line starts to get shaky. Not sure if any of you guys, if any of you have this device, if you have the same problem, let me know. I'd be interested to hear if there's a fix. I know that I have one of the very earliest models. Like they released another 24-inch HD after mine that has new firmware or something. So that could be part of it. I might have to reset the firmware. But anyway, not a big deal. I'm trying to save my money up for the new Wacom when it comes out. It's supposed to come out in January, February. Again, man, I love Clip Studio Paint's Symmetry Tool. It saves so much time. And it's awesome that Photoshop finally came out with the Symmetry Tool. I'm really glad that they did. But the problem with their Symmetry, the way they work, is that it only works for the brushes. So you can't get out the lasso tool and work with it symmetrically, which is a way bigger problem than it might sound, because that means anytime you're coloring, like with the comic book method, where you draw a mask or draw a cut and then fill it with an airbrush, it's only going to show up on one side, and that's really dumb. With Manga Studio here, the Symmetry tool works for every tool pretty much. There might be some of the tools that don't, but it really is almost all of them. So that's really cool. Hey, Hugo asking what tablet do I have? I probably just answered you, but if you didn't hear, I'm using the Wacom 24 HD, and it's old. It's about 7 years. But it's been working great until recently, where it still works fine. It's just every once in a while I gotta shut it off real quick because the line starts to get wobbly. But I have never tried any of the generics. I've spent hours looking at reviews and doing research and stuff, and just every time I'm about to buy a new tablet, I just end up sticking with Wacom because I'm used to the pen, I'm used to the way it works, and they do seem to be the industry leaders, period, right? But there's a premium for that because they're so expensive. But I know HP they're doing something to try to compete with Wacom. That looked interesting. And I know Microsoft has something, right? Or maybe that is HP, where they have a Windows 10 tablet computer that looks interesting too. But I don't know. It would take a lot for me to ditch Wacom at this point. I would really have to try it and see a lot of really positive reviews. Yeah, so I'm getting a question here if I've ever experimented with Wacom Alternatives. Like I said, I never have. Just have done the research and watched video reviews and stuff. I know some artists who use, I think, oh man, I don't remember the name, but there is one out there that is supposed to be a lot better than all the rest. I think most Wacom alternatives are pretty bad. Um, Lots of like driver issues and software issues and all that kind of stuff. But that one, the artist I'm talking about is Beast Pop. Check out his artwork if you're not familiar. But I know he uses a generic tablet, and his line work is incredible. So if it's good enough for him, it's good enough for you. Now I've heard that the new the Wacom Pro Pen 2, the one that comes with the Mobile Studio Pro, is supposed to be like an incredible step forward in the tablet technology. I've heard that there's like almost no, what do you call it? No space between the tip and the cursor. And I think it doubles the pressure sensitivity, whatever that means. So I'm excited about checking that out. So I'm getting a good review here from sorry if I mispronounced your name, Kenya. You're saying the XP Pen Artist 22E has been really good. Have you ever tried a Cintiq by Wacom? I'm just curious, like, because just curious to see if you ever compared it with one of those. I wish there was a place that I could go to try out all these tablets, because there's really no way to do it other than just ordering one and returning it, which is kind of a pain in the neck, you know? Trouble with me is that I'm so insecure. I would get a new tablet, and then the minute I have a bad drawing day, then I would just blame it on the tablet and think I made a horrible decision and go back to Wacom, you know? Hey Tim, what's up? Hey, Tim Hastings here is making a comment saying he's tried. Looks like you tried them all. You tried the Asus E-Slate, iPad, Surface Pro, and Wacom is the best. Yeah, I've tried Surface Pro. It's funny you bring that up because a friend of mine was just recommending it. Gave a really great recommendation for it. But every time I've tried it in the store, uh, I can't escape the feeling of just having like a plastic pen that I'm pushing against glass, you know, and that doesn't feel like drawing to me, and I just couldn't get used to it. I don't know. What I do love about the Surface Pro and the iPad, though, that Wacom doesn't seem to be able to match yet, is just how portable those things are. Like they're so light, and the battery lasts way longer. You know, of course, there's a reason it lasts longer. It lasts longer because they're not as powerful. You know, the Wacom Mobile Studio Pro, that's an incredibly powerful computer. And it's true, the battery life may be only 3 hours, 4 hours, but that's because you're running a lot more. There's a lot more going on in there. Hey, Rob Boss, asking what program I'm using. I use Clip Studio Paint almost exclusively when I'm drawing, and then I'll use Photoshop to color or design text. But I usually color in Clip Studio Paint too. If you've never heard of the program, I have a video on my YouTube page that kind of outlines the things that it does better than Photoshop, if you want to check that out. Alright, so I'm coming up to the end of where my symmetrical ruler is going to be useful here, which is good because this part's kind of boring anyway. Not a lot of rendering, just sort of doing the outlines. I'm just going to do the throne really quick. What do we got? And then I can start getting to the like the dragon head and stuff, and then doing the shading. Hey, Tim, that's interesting. So you're saying you have a Surface Pro 4, but you still hook it up to a Cintiq anyway? So you're not using... But I guess you must use the Surface Pro 4 like when you're out and about, right? The other trouble is every time I price out, like I looked at the Surface Pro 4, but every time I price it out with what I would want, it ends up costing close to $1,500. And by the time you're spending $1,500, you're starting to get close to the Mobile Studio Pro. You know, I think that thing starts at like $1,600 or $1,700, something like that. Still a lot. Yikes. Hey, I'm sorry. It looks like I missed a bunch of questions here. If I missed anybody's question, just please go ahead and ask it again, because sometimes it's hard to look at the feed and draw at the same time. So let me get to, let's see. Yeah, that's a good point. Kenya is talking about the Wacom Alternatives. Like, a lot of them don't have the tilt sensitivity. Which that might bother some people. I don't end up using it, I don't think, at all. Some of the brushes that I sell on my website do have tilt sensitivity, but I usually don't use those brushes very much. I'm not sure why I don't. It's just never really worked very well for me. I was working on a vector layer, but I'm gonna rasterize that so I can start filling in blobs of black. I like to do that kind of early on when a lot of my line art is completed. That way I can that way the whole thing starts to take on a little more volume, you know. Hey, I was I was considering starting to broadcast instead of like at 2:30 in the afternoon on Fridays. Maybe do it like first thing in the morning, like 9 a.m. Um, the reason is I'd like to try to get. I have some people in some followers of Clip Studio Paint in Japan that have been kind of requesting a different time because right now it's like probably 3 in the morning, I think, over there. So if I was able to do it at 9 in the morning Eastern time, then it would be like 10 o'clock for them. The thing is, I don't know if I want to do that or not. So I don't know if anyone here listening has an opinion about a better time. I don't know if 9 o'clock would work for people who are just getting settled into work, you know. I've thought about doing it in the evenings too, but that's always tricky for me because I got 2 kids, and by the time I get them into bed, it's already 8:30, and then I normally am not really in the mood to be doing that kind of thing. So I don't think that's going to work. But if anyone has any better suggestions for times, let me know. Yeah, so I want to answer this question by Rob asking can you vectorize in CSP? And the answer is, unfortunately, no. You can use vector layers, and vector layers in CSP allow you to like do all the things that vector programs let you do. You know, they'll let you resize infinitely, and you can tweak the line with little anchor points and all that. The downside is you cannot then export that artwork like as a EPS or AI file. So it basically only remains a vector as long as you're looking at it in this program, which isn't quite as useful. I hope that someday Clip Studio Paint changes that. If you were able to export a vector layer as an EPS, that would be incredible. And I have no idea about what that would actually take. You know, it could be a lot more difficult than I think it is. But if they worked on that, I think this would become a real contender to Adobe Illustrator. So what I do, I will often, if I need to vectorize things, which isn't usually the case, I don't normally need to produce vector artwork. But when I do need to, I will draw this in Clip Studio Paint, and then I will use a program called Vector Magic to trace it. And Vector Magic, I've talked about it before. It does such an incredible job at tracing line art. If you've ever used Live Paint or Live Trace, in Adobe Illustrator, you know that it's pretty far from perfect. It always makes like weird mistakes, and really screws up your artwork, in my opinion. But this Vector Magic program, it copies it really almost exactly. It's crazy. But it's not free and it's not cheap. It's $200 for that program, but it's a one-time expense. You don't have to subscribe or anything. But at $200, that really makes it kind of only useful if this is your career, you know. Every once in a while, it's good to turn off your pencil drawing to just kind of see how everything's coming together. Oh, I wanted to show something to you guys. Hold on. I just got this book in the mail from the artist Dane Henry Jr. It's amazing. This is his sketchbook, and I just got it on his website. I love this guy. His pencils are so insanely clean. And then he vectorizes the artwork in Adobe Illustrator, I think. Like, he'll ink and color it in there. But it's just ridiculous. Most of these pencils are just ready to print, pretty much. And he must work so fast, too, because he's just producing stuff like a nut job. But anyway, if you haven't heard of him, go check his art out. Dane Henry Jr. is his name. Yeah, Rob, to address your comment, Rob's saying that he's going to get CSP probably because it's got everything Photoshop has. Well, first of all, there's a free trial too, so you can try it out. And if you like it, it's crazy cheap. I think it's normally just $50, like a one-time fee. and then they have sales a lot. So it's pretty cheap. And as far as having everything that Photoshop has, I find the only two areas where it's lacking is in dealing with text. They have text features in here, but it's not worth going into. But there are a lot of kind of shortfalls that I always end up doing text in Adobe Photoshop. The other thing that I wish they had are layer effects, like Adobe Photoshop has, kind of for the same reason. When I'm working with text, with logos and things like that, I use layer effects quite often, and they have some things that are similar. They have blending modes, of course, all the ones that Photoshop has, but they don't have that. So hopefully in another update, they'll just keep making it closer and closer to Photoshop so they can kind of finally replace it completely. But what's neat about it is Photoshop files can be opened in Clip Studio Paint. So all of my finished work that I do here, I save as a Photoshop file so that if I need to open it in the other program, I can. It's cool. The trick is if you've got things like text layers or layer effects from Photoshop, those are not going to open, or they will open, but they get rasterized, and they don't look right when you open them in Clip Studio Paint. So that's something you got to look out for. I would love to actually just be able to completely cancel my Photoshop subscription. I've been looking into something called Affinity Photo as a replacement. The trick is, like, Photoshop still does have a lot of cool stuff that I always end up needing. And one of those things is the ability, the kind of recent ability to like apply multiple layer effects to the same thing. So you can add like multiple strokes and multiple outer glows and stuff like that. That's super useful, and no other program seems to be able to do that, unfortunately. I've talked about this before, but I try to stay pretty zoomed out when I'm working because I find that if I'm zooming in like down to this level, for example, I'll end up spending way too much time on stuff, and then when I zoom out, my work is not only barely legible, but the whole piece starts to become a little confusing, I think. So I try, especially when I'm doing the first pass on line art, I try to stay zoomed out. And the way I look at it is like if I'm drawing this on a desk in traditional tools, like traditional inks, you're not constantly zooming in. You see the whole piece in front of you. And I think that really helps. And that's one disadvantage of digital, is that it's easy to get like really confused about what it is you're actually drawing and rendering. You also want to make sure when you're inking something that you know is going to be colored, that you kind of leave room for the colors to really take effect. Because sometimes if you apply too much line art and too many little details, then when you go to color the thing, there's no room to put a mid-tone or a shadow. Hey Ben, what's up, buddy? Hey, Ben, let's hang out this weekend. So Rob, thanks for buying the Rick and Morty shirt at Hot Topic. Um, how I got that design in Hot Topic was that I submitted to a contest, which I don't usually recommend, but I did it just because I love the show so much, and the design was picked, and then they paid me a little money, emphasis on the little, and then they printed it in Hot Topic stores like all over the world, really. So that was very cool. Um, I I got mixed feelings about it. I've talked about this before because they've done very well with that shirt. They told me it was like one of their highest selling shirts ever, I guess. And now they're printing it on blankets and stuff, and who knows what they'll be printing it on next. But the contest itself was supposed to just be for T-shirts, um, and now they're just going to town. And that company that printed the shirts like wanted to hire me to create more graphics for them, but the price they wanted to pay was so low that I had to turn it down, unfortunately. So so if you want to get your designs in Hot Topic, um, I guess I would just go to Hot Topic and find the brands that print those shirts and get their contact info somewhere and start submitting your work. Maybe they'll hire you to do something. Maybe you have something that they would buy outright. I don't know. But I will tell you from experience not to expect a whole lot out of it. All right, so I thought I was going to be able to finish this inking today, but it doesn't look like it's going to happen, unfortunately. I took too long with some of the pieces. But I'll be streaming for another 10 minutes if anybody has any other questions. Thanks a lot for everyone who watched and asked questions so far. That really helps. Hey, thanks, Rob. I appreciate it. One tip I learned a while back was like, it's gonna be hard to describe, but when you're trying to draw shapes that you know you're not gonna be able to hit, uh, like really round, perfect curves or something, instead of trying to make that curve work, I kind of instead just like kind of apply almost random pressure to the brush stroke, so that, like in this case here, this ended up not being a perfect curve. It's just, it comes across as rougher, more interesting to look at, I think. But it's really just a kind of a cheat, really. Because what happens is, if I was going to sit here and try to draw this perfect curve, if it is even a tiny bit imperfect, it starts to stick out really bad. Hey, Tim. Tim Hastings asked a really great question here, about Patreon. If anybody is listening and doesn't know what Patreon is, it's basically a place where you can go, and you sign up for an account, and in a way, people like pledge money to help support you. Okay, so the way it would work for an artist is that you would say, okay, guys, I'm going to, for example, do a live broadcast every Friday or something. And then people who sign up can say, all right, cool, well, I'm going to pay you $5 a month to do that. And then you start to compile fans, and then that money starts to add up. So I did look into that. I thought that would be interesting. The problem that I saw happening with Patreon, I saw a lot of my peers, people who like really, really do excellent artwork, they were spending an incredible amount of time on their Patreon pages, spending a lot of time promoting it and building content for the page and doing all this stuff. And even with all of that work, maybe some of them were getting $100 a month, $200 a month, something like that. And I'm already so busy just with my client work, and then trying to create my own products and doing stuff like this. Like, just the live stream actually takes me usually a half an hour to kind of get everything set up before I even do this. I don't know if I would have time for another thing, and I guess I would be nervous that I would put a lot of work into it, but then not really get a whole lot of support, because there's just so many things, so many really cool things out there competing for everybody's money. I mean, I support artists as much as I can by buying their prints and T-shirts and things like that, but I don't spend a lot. I mean, I'm trying to think. You know, I might buy something from an artist maybe every 3 months even, and I'm not doing that intentionally. It's just there's other things to spend your money on. So anyway, I do know of some success stories with Patreon. I think there's like a 24-year-old girl on there, and all she does is she just draws fan art of some anime thing, and I'm pretty sure she's making like something like $4,000 a week. So, but of course, there's success stories with YouTube as well, and it's easy to get infatuated with those success stories and forget that most people, like myself, don't make anything from it. So I don't know. I'll give it another look. Have you, Tim? Have you thought about it? Yeah. Hey, Rob. And to answer your question, yes, Clip Studio Paint has a stroke stabilization feature here. So it's right here in the menu. And I don't like to have a lot of stroke stabilization because I feel like it messes up the line too much. So I have it turned at 10, which is pretty low, but you can turn it all the way up to 100. You know, so let me show you what it's like at like, 49 or something. So now, of course, that slows everything down a lot. But it is handy if you need, like if I'm gonna tackle this shape here. Oops. It's handy to turn that on, Now, I guess Photoshop recently released a brush stabilization feature too, and I feel the same way about it as I do with the symmetrical drawing feature. It's like, yeah, I'm glad it's finally here and it's pretty good, but it's not as good as what Clip Studio Paint already has, Yeah, Tim, if you do Patreon, maybe I might end up talking with you about how much work it actually is, because if it was something that only added a couple hours a month of work and then brought in a little extra income, I might be interested in looking at that. I kind of have a lot of the raw materials already going, but to be honest, I do feel a little weird asking people, just regular people, send me money to just kind of do what I would be doing anyway, or so I don't know. I mean, maybe I need to get past that. Who knows? All right, cool. So I'm trying to just broadcast for an hour, so I'm going to wrap this up. I wish I had been able to finish this, but I couldn't. What I'm going to be doing next, after I draw the last remaining things, is I'm going to go in over top and add like a lot of the detail lines that render this thing. Rough things up, draw more black shadows, and then when I'm done with that, I'll move on to the color. Cool. All right, well, thanks a lot, everybody who's watching. Thanks a lot for your comments. That really helps. And if I missed anybody's question, please go ahead and post it in the comments, and I'd love to help you out. So I will see you next week. If you want to check out my work, it's at flylanddesigns.com. And you can follow me on Facebook and Instagram and YouTube. And thanks for watching. Bye.